As a kid, I played a Legacy of Kain game. It wasn't this one, but I loved it. Later on, I found out there's a whole franchise based around it. Looking at the first game and where we ended up, the only thing I can say is how the heck did we get here? Omen is actually the first game in a 5-game franchise, and this is the only one that looks and plays like this one. The rest aren't even close. This is an action-adventure game with a top-down perspective, and we play the title character of Kain. This game really starts out like no other. Your character's dead. Within the first couple of minutes of playing as Kain, you actually get murdered out in the middle of the streets.
The tavern's closing. Best be on your way, stranger.
What? No mug of ale for a weary traveller from distant Corhagen? I can reward you well, for I am of noble blood.
I stay open for no man in these dark times. Things come with the night that no sane man would welcome.
And so I left, cold of heart and soul, forced to the road and the long, bitter night.
That's him! End it! Now!
This is where the narrative actually gets going, not with your life, but your death and resurrection as a vampire.
They victors, suffering to the conquered. Ironic that now I was the one suffering. Not anything as pedestrian as physical pain, rather the cruel jab of impotent anger. The hunger for revenge. I didn't care if I was in heaven or hell. All I wanted was to kill my assassins. Sometimes you get what you wish for. The necromancer Mortanius offered me a chance for vengeance, and like a fool, I jumped at his offer without considering the cost. Nothing is free, not even revenge.
You will have the blood you hunger for.
Can't really think of too many other games that would start this way, especially back then. Most things played it safe with your hero. A certain plumber comes to mind.
Oh, yikes forever.
Instead of our usual quest to save someone, this is actually a story of vengeance and murder. Again, a little different. We start this game off with a very small scope, and it quickly expands out into this giant world that we're having to go through.
Their sneering faces were forever etched upon my memory. I had crossed death for this moment. My mind was empty save for one thought. I would kill.
The Circle of Nine draw their powers from the pillars of Nosgoth. The decay of the pillars is the result of the deterioration of their minds. To heal the sickness, you must first destroy that which causes the disease.
What starts off as simple vengeance ends up taking us through the entire land of Nosgoth and trying to defeat the guardians of the pillars. And that's a lot to swallow already for some people. I just shouted some words out that really make no sense to anyone unless you played this game or any of its sequels. So we're going to break a few of those down. The first of that being Nosgoth. This is the brainchild of Silicon Knights. Most notably Dennis Dyack, which is a name I feel like some gamers should be very familiar with, as I consider him to kind of be legendary in the game development world. If you don't know, he went on to make games like Eternal Darkness, which we need to go over at some point in this channel. The basis of the whole story is the corruption and crumbling of these pillars. The guardian of the balance pillar was brutally murdered, and her ghost is pushing Kain along, murdering the other guardians in order to restore balance to the world. So you have this very creative world. Gameplay is actually quite simple. It's a hack and slash adventure game. As you go along, you pick up different weapons and powers that only add to your strengths. I'm sure most of you are realizing that I actually find the development of these games to be quite interesting and something that is drastically overlooked when revisiting some of these gems. This one is no exception for being interesting. I just stated that the actual game world was created by Silicon Knights and Dennis Dyack. Well, there was a lot more going on behind the scenes than just that. This team was working really hard on making a game that was actually aimed towards an older audience. The problem was they really couldn't do it on their own apparently, and they ended up teaming up with Crystal Dynamics. Both of these companies should be very well known to you if you grew up in gaming. Like I said, Silicon Knights was responsible for Eternal Darkness. Crystal Dynamics, on the other hand, worked on things like Tomb Raider, post-Tomb Raider Legends, and the Gex franchise. Well, we're already hitting kind of a road bump right here with the lawsuit that was filed between Silicon Knights and Crystal Dynamics. This was filed in October 23rd of 1997 in San Jose, California. I am definitely no lawyer, although at some point I would love to go over the documents in a separate video because they are definitely something to behold and really shady looking. In the end, it appears to have been settled out of court, and the game rights appeared to be completely stolen from Silicon Knights. The rights of the game went to Crystal Dynamics, cutting out Silicon Knights completely and Dennis Dyack. They no longer had control over the IP that they created and brainstormed. This actually creates a very interesting problem because we ended up with a franchise that was never necessarily intended to go in the direction that we got, as much as I love the next one, which was Soul Reaver. Dyack was quoted as saying, "If you look at Legacy of Kain where it is right now, so diluted, so dysfunctional, as a property itself, it's pretty much gone in a completely different direction than we ever would have taken it. Even if the developer's good, and I think Crystal Dynamics is not a bad developer, you still get this dilution of content because the original author is gone." The biggest thing for someone like me is I would have loved to see where the content actually would have ended up going. As much as I'm intrigued with the direction Dennis Dyack would have gone, there's no arguing that we actually ended up with a pretty solid franchise. There's 5 main games and a spin-off, which is a 5v5 game called Nosgoth. Unfortunately, the game servers were shut down not too long after I started playing it. I actually rather enjoyed it. On a narrative side, we ended up with a game that focused an awful lot on an adult audience. It's not something that was super popular for devs to do at that time, so this was really refreshing. In my opinion, because of this game, we ended up with possibly some of the best voice acting in gaming at that time, and as far as I'm concerned, still with Simon Templeton as Kain.
The pillars of Nosgoth. Even in life, few sights have moved me such as this. I marvel that such beauty should grace our dying world.
I know he was in a lot of games prior to Legacy of Kain Blood Omen, including some Star Wars games, but this was his first big breakout role. This game is the definition of a forgotten gem, and it's horribly overshadowed by its sequel, Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver. Because of all the weird litigation stuff, this game was actually never put back on Steam, unlike the other games in the franchise, although I would really recommend not playing the Steam version of these games. We'll talk about that in those videos. Because of this, though, that means there's a lot of people who never played the original and missed out on a really cool origin story to a very complex character. Frankly, this game is never going to be remastered. That's a hard prediction, but that's kind of how it looks with everything that's been going on with that franchise. The only way you're playing this, get an old copy of the game or emulate it, which is kind of unfortunate. This is one of the few times those are your only options. Thank you for watching my Legacy of Kain Blood Omen video. We went from playing Blood Rain, which I really did not enjoy, to doing this one, and it was a breath of fresh air. If you enjoyed it, please hit like and subscribe. Until next time, I'm Adam the Horror Historian. Long days, pleasant nights, and may you have twice the number.